Truth Frequency Radio.
The wicked ones obviously under heavy Masonic influence.
Welcome, friends, listeners, viewers, and readers from across America and around the world. I am your host, Zen Garcia. This is Secrets Revealed, and as always, I'm just honored to be here with you today and to have a chance to share fellowship and to speak about all things esoteric. I wanted to cover in this show kind of talk a little bit about some recent documentaries that have come up, and like, for instance, Behind the Curve, the Flat Earth documentaries, and then the creationist group just created a video also. I forget the exact name of it, but I will look that up. And then also recently we know that Logan Paul just released his whole spoof, which was a farce, and basically, the flat earth community got played in all of that, and it's not a good thing, but at least it does generate some interest in flat earth, even though for a lot of people it will just be made to look nonsensical and unworthy of introspection, which is sad, because truly, as far as understanding cosmology and confirming that the earth is not a sphere, that is something that anybody can do anywhere in the world and quickly come to such revelation. And in doing so, it forces you beyond a shadow of a doubt to have to reconsider paradigm for where one thought they were in world. I mean, there's really no two other ways about it, that anybody anywhere can check as far as line of sight and do a visual laser test over 2, 3, 4, 5 miles stretch of water. And that's really all you need, because in that small stretch of space, there should be enough curvature for one to determine if it actually, and this is something that many people have confirmed for themselves. They've done the examination, looked out, and have seen, because all of us, in the different parts of the world, wherever we live, there's something of interest, some kind of monument or island or lighthouse or something of interest. The Statue of Liberty, the Chicago skyline, whatever it is. There's some kind of structure which we can come up with in our mind wherever we may live, and can go and examine and do an investigation, and looking out at that particular object of interest, wherever it may be, especially if it is sitting upon water, that being able to see it and have line of sight over 10, 20, 30 miles, even greater distances than that. And especially now that people are doing a lot of this infrared research, that you are able to see way beyond. I mean, we're talking with the infrared hundreds of miles. And I mean, that absolutely proves, verifies. It's impossible, as far as what people say, and with regard to being able to actually see if there were true curvature, then one would not be able to see and experience and visually examine, look upon something in the manner that we are able to. I mean, it's an impossibility. And so those kind of things confirm without a doubt that what they say and with regard to the curvature of the earth and that it exists, no, it's confirmable. Um, oh, okay, yeah, I was looking up the name of that the creation guys put out. It's Faith on the Edge, which is, a biblical attempt to debunk flat Earth and the truth of it. And like I said, there's no debunking it because there is no curvature, and neither is the Earth moving at 1,037 miles an hour. And so those two things, which have been scientifically verified and addressed by different investigators, scientists over centuries now. The Michelson-Morley, Sagnat-Ares failure, Michelson-Morley Gale, and others have conducted experiments where, being heliocentrists themselves, they were attempting to determine the velocity and the rate at which the Earth was moving in orbit around the sun and spinning, because it would have to complete one full rotation every day in order to give us the 24-hour day as depicted in the heliocentric model, that there should be one full movement of night and day. And if the sun is the center of the so-called solar system, and all of the planets are moving in orbit and spinning like a top as they do so, rate of velocity that the Earth would have to be moving in order to complete one full rotation, giving its circumference is 24,901 miles, which interestingly is a breakdown of that is moving at 18.5 miles per second. And when you multiply that by 60 seconds and then 60 minutes and then times 24 hours, it gives you the speed of 66,600 miles an hour, which there certainly seems to be a lot of 666 numerology involved with the mathematics of the heliocentric paradigm for understanding world. And do I think that to be Coincidence? Absolutely not. In my mind, that is a verification as to who is perpetuating and even from whom all of this originated as lie and deception. And it's also my opinion that what we see with regard to the Sumerian mythos that, you know, 6,000 years ago in the cuneiform text and the Sumerian mythology, they have depiction of a heliocentric worldview, and they count from the outside in the planets, beginning with Nibiru being caught. You know, they give this whole creation story like the Enuma Elish, where Nibiru is captured by the gravitational force of the outer planets, Neptune and Uranus, and being pulled in, it then is caught in a trajectory that gives it an orbit where it comes and cycles once every 3,600 years around the sun and crosses the ecliptic there where the asteroid belt is said to be. And that supposedly the moon, one of its moons, the west wind, had come into conflict with the planet that had been there previously, that this was um, a part of the old Earth, and that it was gutted by this moon, and it left the asteroid belt and then also shifted what was remaining of the Earth. They called it the planet Key, I believe, and shifted it to the inner orbit inside of that of Mars, and then supposedly the Earth became the third planet in orbit around the sun. And it's also said that, you know, because Nibiru was moving in a trajectory that was opposite to that of the other planets, that it affected them to such degree that some of them wobble, and Venus, for instance, is said to now spin in the opposite direction. Now, whether any of that is true or not, that is the mythos associated with the Enuma Elish and the creation story of the so-called solar system. And this mythology goes back 6,000 years to, you know, a lot of people believe the Sumerian culture to be the oldest in the world, but that has since been debunked. In 2006, the language of the Thracian peoples was translated, interpreted by a Dr. Stephen Guide and his brother, Bishop Zavetin Gardiski. And in translating the language, they were able to bring about for the first time what is the written language of the oldest culture and the oldest writing system on the earth post flood. And these particular Thracian peoples, well, what is interesting about them is that they were Christians, and they also believed in the cosmology as depicted in Genesis, with regard to the earth being covered over by a firmament and the stars being placed within it, that they hold circuit and have a movement where they are um, cycling through the tabernacles, the seven heavens. And so tonight I wanted to share a text that I had found a long time ago in doing some study in a lot of the different extra biblical texts, that I was absolutely blown away when I discovered this one Irish medieval apocryphal text, and it re-examines the creation of the world. I was so blown away when I first discovered it that I hoarded its contents and did not reveal any of it to anybody until I was able to release it into print and to publish my findings in what was then my 19th book, Paradise, Sides of the North and the Mount of the Congregation. And I thought it would become, especially to the flat earth community, something of a prized manuscript, sort of like, the Gleason map, that it would become something that was well known. But still, there are very few people that know about it, have studied it, and are really interested in examining it, other than the people that are and have been studying my work and have read the trilogy that I've released on, the flat earth as key to decrypt the book of Enoch, the firmament vaulted dome of the earth, and then Paradise, Sides of the North, and Mount of the Congregation, which goes into great detail as to how the cosmology is truly laid out. I think a lot has to do with that. I'm so very ostracized within even the alternative truth community, and that being blacklisted, people are afraid to examine my work. And because of that, a lot of the discoveries that I have made, even really being, you know, one of the first to, in the last 500 years, to understand what Enoch was revealing in the book on the courses of the heavenly luminaries, and sharing my interpretation and decryption of his work, I was able to prove without a doubt that what Enoch is describing as the movement of the luminaries is the way that one understands it when you examine, for instance, the flat earth sun and moon clock that was the app that was made by David Wise and the other guys that helped him out, that it depicts exactly what Enoch speaks about within that portion of the text. And it shows without a doubt how the seasons unfold, how the months, the weeks, the days, according to the clockwork system that is encoded into the, Enoch thousands of years ago shared in scripture the exact motions for determining and understanding this incredible clockwork system. And yet it's gone little understood, and it's been misunderstood by, countless people for the last 500 years. And so, I thought even that would be something that would really spark interest in re-examining the Book of Enoch and at least that particular portion of the book. And the other thing is, in decrypting all of that material, I was able to bring forth the calendar system which Enoch describes in breaking down the movements of the sun and the moon and the planets and the zodiac, that all of it together gives us the intricate workings of what is the heavens above the face of the earth. And that is a truly interesting study, and something that, a lot of people still don't understand. And I've been trying to bring forth and help people to re-examine how it is that the luminaries determine this calendar system, and how it is that the moon specifically shows to us and is a witness, a nightly witness to the cycles of the day, from the very first day to what would be either the 29th or the 30th day of every month. That whereas the Gregorian calendar, some months there's 31 days, some months 28 days, other months 30 days. It's completely divorced from what are the movements. You can't keep up with or make determination of where you are in a month or a week or a particular day by looking at anything within the heavens. There's no alignment with the Gregorian or even the Enochian solar calendar, because the Enochian solar calendar, um, it tracks the motions of the sun, and the sun every day when it rises, yes, you can see, it moves from east to west and then sets and then night comes in, but there's nothing different. It is the same thing over and over. Even though it is shortening and lengthening its circuit as it moves back and forth through the six gates of heaven, in bouncing back and forth between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. And yes, you can mark and set markers to determine where the solstices and the equinoxes occur, but it's difficult to keep up with that subtle deviation every day and to be able to know exactly where one is according to the motions of the sun over the course of every day of the year. However, adding the moon into that equation, one can easily determine the nightly and the weekly cycles and sabbatical weeks as they unfold according to the appearance of the moon as waxing crescent. Then its quarterly phases align, in my opinion, with the Sabbaths, that you have the first quarter Sabbath, full moon Sabbath, third quarter, and lunar conjunction Sabbath. All right, we'll be right back, and I'll go into some of this text. All right, welcome back, everybody. I want to address just a couple more things before we go into this text, because it's so very difficult for people to because there is something to the whole as far as UFO phenomena, but with regard to them being from other galaxies and out there and billions of star or light years away, I think a lot of that is just fabrication, and that it is done so in order to get people to buy into the whole postulation, which again, you see the Sumerian mythology being the foundation for that. It describes that they created these way stations on both the moon and Mars, and that there's even, as part of their mythos, stories of Alalu, uh, an ancient Niburian king who, leaving Nibiru and breaking through the asteroid belt, was able to arrive here to the Earth, and then discovering gold was able to relay in message his discovery, and that was when the Niburians sent the first 50 so-called, gods from their planet down here to the Earth, and then they began to explore, and they set up what is called Eridu, home in the faraway, and that was the first city that they established here, and that they began to colonize the Earth. And the reason that they did all this, according to the story, was so that they could get the gold and then pulverizing it and suspending it in powder form into their atmosphere. They were able to heal a breach which caused them ecological disaster every time they came near the sun in their approach, in their orbit, when they began to near the sun, that it would wreak havoc on the environment and the creatures and the people of their planet, according to the story, which, the story is really incredible and compelling when you first read it. But then again, when you learn that the earth has no curvature, nor is it moving, the whole idea for a solar system, and that, the earth is moving around the sun, and that the sun 93 million miles away is so much larger than the earth, all that has to be thrown out the window. And then if all of that is false, then everything that the Sumerian mythologies state about traveling from these outer planets, and even the whole creation mythology about how Nibiru was caught as a planet by the so-called net force, or the gravitation of these outer planets, and then it became, the planet of the crossing, and that it has this 3,600 year orbit. All that is false. And so reconsidering and having to contend with that, two things come to mind. First, that the Anunnaki, these so-called superior gods, they are absolute liars. And not only are they liars, but they have, for whatever reason, falsified an ideology in order to drive humanity into accepting a certain mindset. And in my opinion, that mindset falls right in line with the whole Darwinian Copernican heliocentric model for understanding world. That they want us to believe that we evolved as monkeys, that evolution is real, except that there's this twist that they, as extraterrestrial alien gods from galaxies far, far away, that being millions of years in advance of humans with regard to technology capability, that they were the ones that jumped the gun on evolution and even created modern humanity here on the earth. And then leaving to return to their planet, they left us to our own devices, but with promise that they would return at some future point in order to redeem us and save us from ourselves. And this is the story they want you to believe. And understanding this, and for those that actually know the Sumerian mythology in connection to, as well as the biblical prophetic, as far as God's word and the story of the biblical narrative and what is brought forth in the Gospels, then you know that that particular mythology fits right in line with the strong delusion and with the New World Order reign of the Antichrist. And so, having studied and been involved in both, uh, I am uniquely capable of helping people to see through the lies of that whole model. And, there are so many well researched investigators, truth seekers, and explorers, people that have lots of letters after their name, that have written many books, and that are world famous, that are frequently brought out and, put on different History Channel programs such as Ancient Aliens and others, that profess to understanding, but they twist it and they say that the Bible is actually written by and speaks of these extraterrestrials, and that Christ was nothing more than an ascended master or one of these Anunnaki. And so they twist everything upside down and they turn it around the other way. Whereas I'm explaining it to you that the Anunnakis, being liars, are not to be trusted, and that there's a reason why they are trying to formulate and establish in the mindset of humanity that, galaxies do exist and that we live in a ever expanding universe where the Earth is one of 9 planets in orbit around the sun, that the sun is 93 million miles away, and it's 108 times the size of the Earth across its diameter. And they want you to believe that the stars that you see in the night sky are millions and billions of light years away. And as I said, it's all for a particular reason. They are setting the foundation for the belief that the extraterrestrials created us. And because they jumped the gun on evolution, that's the reason why we're not able to find the so called missing link between man and his ancestor ape. And the Bible speaks about this as the strong delusion, without a doubt that it is part of the strong delusion. Because remember, the Antichrist is going to come in and sweep away the minds, the hearts, and engage humanity and divert the worship of the Most High to himself. He's going to steal with wonder, reverence, people's reverence and people's worship of the true Savior Messiah, the Son of God, and also the Father and the Holy Spirit, the triune Godhead. He's going to divert such reverence to himself. And the way he's going to do that is by sweeping and capturing and mesmerizing everybody in strong delusion. And you can bet that there's going to be a lot of the organizations, especially the international and Vatican and United Nations supported organizations, that they will be totally in line and towing the whole theme of that the extraterrestrials are closer to God than we are, and so we should trust them to interpret the gospel for us. You can bet it's all coming. All right, and so I'm going to go into this particular text. It is called the Evernew tongue. It's an Irish text. It dates back to possibly, they say, between the 11th and 15th century. I believe it to be older. It is attributed to one of the apostles, Philip, who had his tongue cut out 7 times in order to silence him. There are older renditions that go back to the 7th century and earlier, but nobody really knows. But anyways, as I said, it is one of the only texts that I was able to find which actually gives a review and gives greater depth and greater explanation into the establishment of the creation over the first 7 days of the creation week. The establishment of the heavens and the earth, the firmament on the second day, the dry land being elevated above the sea level in the third day, the fourth day, the stars, the luminaries being created, placed into the firmament, which was fitted to the circle of the earth. And then you have all of the creatures being established thereafter until we get to the creation of humanity on the sixth day. And then on the seventh day, you have a day of rest, the Sabbath. And then after that day, you see the fall of humanity and Adam and Eve being cast out from paradise. They're now under the authority of death, and they are driven out of the heavenlies and find themselves now banished here to the earth where the fallen angels, the archons or the Anunnaki, have been previously expelled to. And it will speak about all this in this particular model as well, which is fascinating because it confirms my studies on the primeval world age and the destruction of that particular world age, and also how it was that the war in heaven, the division between light and darkness, all of that led to what is our modern age under Adam and Eve, the last 6,000 years, and what will be also the millennial reign, adding that to that particular timeline. All right, so it's called the Evernew tongue. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. I had to magnify it a little bit. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth, the high king of the world, who is mightier than any king, higher than any power, fiercer than any dragon, gentler than any child, brighter than suns, holier than any saint, more vengeful than men, more loving than any mother, the only Son of God the Father, having given to the many tribes of the world this account of the form and the creation of the universe, since the shape that ought visible in the universe possessed was unknown save only to God, since for Adam's race it was a head in a bag and being in a dark house, never having known what shape was on the world, nor who created it, until this account came from heaven to open everyone's sense and intellect, so that the way of life and of salvation might be ascertained and found by souls. And so, as I said, it's going to reveal and go into exactly. And I got 7 minutes, so I'll be able to cover a little bit. All right, that was verse 1. For everything was obscure to the eyes of Adam's race, save that they used to see the course of the stars, to wit, of the moon and sun and the other stars, which used to go round every day continually without resting. So they used to see the world's wells and rivers flowing without cessation, always at every time. And so they used to see the sadness of the earth and the trance and sleep of the light and the fruits of at the coming of winter. So they used to see the resurrection of the world with its warmth and light, with its flowers and fruits, at the rear rising of summer. Still they knew not who wrought that until there came this story of the creation of the world, with its shapes and services as God had arranged them. Obscure then was all this until this tale was set forth, until it was revealed by the Evernew tongue, who spake from the roof of heaven above the assembly of Mount Zion. For the concourse of the east of the world was gathered together, to wit, all that were from the mountains of Abion, as far as the shores of the Red Sea, and from the Dead Sea as far as the islands of Sabar. And this was the number of the congregation, 3,485 bishops, and 54,969 kings of the world. Now that assembly lasted to the end of 4 months and a year, to wit, summer, winter, spring, autumn, under 900 awnings of white sheets with golden diadems. On the summer of Mount Zion, 5,950 tower torches and precious stones were kindled for the illumination of the concourse, so that no storm should at any time hinder it. 250 bishops and 500 priests and 3,000 other ecclesiastes and thrice 50 innocent children and 500 high kings with their army before them. At midnight they would enter Jerusalem with musical voices, and at every nocturne they would come together with melodies of the gladness that is sung in the holy clouds. Gloria in excelsis Deo, etc. Then the hosts of the conquerors were going between two plains before them, as this expedition and the hosts on Mount Zion turned with the music of the gladness and with melodies of angels according to the lawful ranks of the high king. And suddenly thereafter, when it was at the end of Easter, somewhere somewhat was heard, the sound in the clouds like the noise of thunder, or it resembled the crash of fire on an oak. Meanwhile there was a thunder blast, and suddenly was seen the solar glow, like a radiant sun in the midst of the sound. That radiant solar glow turned around and round, so that eyesight could not overtake it, for it was 7 times more radiant than that of the sun. And then suddenly, after that, somewhat was heard when the eyes of the host were expecting the sound, for they thought that it was a sign of the judgment. Somewhat was heard the clear voice that spake in the language of angels, Hixia Habia, that is, hear ye this story, O sons of men. I have been sent by God to hold speech with you. And suddenly thereafter swooning and fear fell upon the hosts. It was not a frightening without cause. The resonance of the voice was like the shout of an army, save that at the same time it was clearer and plainer than the voices of human beings. It sounds over the multitude like the cry of a mighty wind, which yet was not greater than the converse of friends among them in the ears of each other. And it was sweeter than the melodies of the world. I will probably pick it up on the other side. But basically, you see that the story is that Philip, he's called the Evernew tongue, he's sent by God when they were having this huge gathering of all these bishops and all these kings and all their families and members and their armies, and they were all gathered outside of Jerusalem. Now, I don't know if this was for the crusade or what, but there was a huge congregation of them, and they were meeting there outside of the holy city. And God sent Philip to instruct them on the creation of the world and the shape. And you're going to be amazed by what is revealed in these in the following segments. All right, we'll be right back, everyone. All right, welcome back, everybody, for second hour. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Secrets Revealed here on Truth Frequency Radio, and I've been speaking about this evening as far as biblical cosmology and also the various documentaries that have come out behind the curve, um, the whole Logan Paul farce, and then the Faith on the Edge put out by the Creation guys, which, again, for them to be basing their heliocentric beliefs on the Bible, I mean, they're filtering it. They're trying to, they're filtering the Bible through scientism. And so they're imposing upon the scriptures their slant on what they believe of reality, when it should be the opposite way around, that people should open-mindedly study what the Bible says and then use the Bible to filter and bring upon perspective of how to understand the cosmos. And yet they're doing it the opposite. And for that reason is why, in my opinion, they are failing. Because again, there's no truth to the heliocentric model. And I have no doubt at all, because there's no curvature, and anybody can prove this. And if there's no curvature, there's no rotundity to the earth. If there's no rotundity to the earth, it is not a sphere. And anyways, the whole thing with, the properties of water negate that water can adhere to a ball. It will always settle out, gather together and pull, and then settle flat across the horizon. That is the natural properties of water, the natural physics of how water collects, gathers, and pulls. It can never adhere to a ball. And so, anyways, I'm sharing and reading from a particular text that I had discovered in the 2015 release. I think it was 2015. Maybe it was 2016. But anyways, it's when I did the August debate with Dr. Stephen Pidgeon on the flat versus globe Earth, that particular debate. And I had finished actually Paradise, Sides of the North, and the Mount of the Congregation, and released it there at that particular conference. But the highlight of the release of that book was the discovery of this text, which I'm reading and sharing in portion now, because it reviews and brings forth in discussion the way that the Most High had established the earth and the universe during the first creation week. And so going back to it, because I want to be able to, well, I know I won't be able to finish the text, it's very long. But for those that are interested in it, and if you'd like to read it for yourself and review all the different passages, I have released it I pasted it in full in the final chapter of Paradise, the Sides of the North, and the Mount of the Congregation. That was my 19th book, and it was also the last installment of the Flat Earth Firmament trilogy. And it details, as I said earlier, in great elaboration, the particulars of the cosmology and of the world system that we live in. The depths of Sheol, paradise, the earth as the meeting place for what are the spiritual and the visible worlds, that there's 7 levels of heaven and 7 levels of the earth going down into what is Tartarus, the deepest level where the angels and the giants are held, bound in imprisonment for the last day's judgment. To the text, verse 9, it says, the sages of the Hebrews answered and said, let us know from thee thy name and thy substance and thy appearance. Somewhat was heard, the Evernew tongue spake with an angelic voice. Natir, etc., that is, among the tribes of earth, in sooth, I was born, and of the conception of man and woman I have been conceived. This is my name, Philip the apostle. The Lord sent me to the tribes of the heathen to preach to them, and 9 times hath my tongue been cut out of my head by the heathen, and 9 times I continue to preach again. Wherefore this is my name with the household of heaven, the Evernew tongue. And it's because, God regrew his tongue every time they cut it out of his head. And so he was able to continue preaching. And that's why in the heavenlies he is known as the Evernew tongue. The sages of the Hebrews spake, let us know from thee what language thou speakest unto us. I said that there is the speech of angels, quoth he, and the language which I speak to you is that of all the ranks of heaven, as to beasts of the sea and reptiles, and the quadrupeds and birds and snakes and demons. They know it, and this is the language which all will speak at the judgment. I believe it's Hebrew because it says that, that's what will be restored to speaking at the end of days. This then is what has driven me to you to explain to you the wondrous tale which the Holy Ghost declared through Moses, son of Amram, of the creation of heaven and earth with all that exists therein. For 'tis of the making of heaven and earth that the tale tells, even so, and of the formation of the world, which has been effected by Christ's resurrection from the dead on this eve of Easter. For every material and every element and every nature which is seen in the world were all combined in the body in which Christ arose. That in the body of every human, in the first place, is the matter of wind and air. Hence came to pass the afflation of breath in the bodies of men. And then there is the matter of heat and boiling from fire. 'Tis this that makes the red heat of blood in bodies. Then there is the matter of the sun and the other stars of heaven. And 'tis this that makes color and light in the eyes of men. Then there is the matter of bitterness and saltiness, and 'tis that which makes the bitterness of tears, and the gall of the liver, and the abundance of wrath in the hearts of men. Then there is the matter of the stones and of the clay of earth, that makes the mingling of flesh and bone and limbs in human beings. Then there is in it the matter of the flowers and beautiful hues of earth, and 'tis this that makes the variegation and whiteness, the faces and color in the cheeks. All the world arose with him, for the nature of all the elements dwelt in the body which Jesus assumed. For unless the Lord had suffered on behalf of Adam's race, and unless he had risen after death, the whole world together with Adam's race would be destroyed at the coming of doom, and no creature or no creature of sea or land would be reborn. But the heavens, as far as the third heaven, would blaze, save only three heavens at the height of welkin, three heavens of the high welkin. None would abide without burning. There would be neither earth nor kindred, alive or dead in the world, only hell and heaven, had not the Lord come to ransom them. All would have perished thus without renewal. That's a very sobering passage. And it shows to us why it is that Christ had to come into the flesh to redeem humanity and to rectify the fall. Because we were not worthy, and falling into a sinful nature, we couldn't redeem ourselves. And certainly this is also part of the deception that is coming, the Antichrist deception, that they're going to tell us that we can be redeemed through the extraterrestrials, or that they can somehow bring salvation to us in whatever way, whatever, um, however it is that they convince humanity that the Antichrist has power to forgive, and that it was he that, basically redeemed us prior. For this, says Philip, I have come unto you that I may declare to you these tidings. For obscure to you is the making of the form of the world, as it hath been recounted of old. Veil, then, say the ages of the Hebrews, the sages of the Hebrews, relate to us some of the innumerable wonders which have happened there, for it is dark to us, unless it be diligently. Somewhat was heard the Evernew tongue which spake in the language of angels, saying, Laudi, in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth, and it saith, Ambila Bain, slow it were to recount through the Hebrew all that is there uttered, that there was no ordering of the colors, that there was no earth with its mountains and its tribes, nor sea with its islands, nor hell with its torments, before he said that these elements should exist that there were no circuits of the seven heavens, nor clouds to irrigate the earth, nor spark, nor dispersal of storms, that there were no lands whereon they would pour, that there was neither rain nor snow, that there was neither lightnings nor blast of wind, nor thunders, that there was neither course of sun, nor vicissitudes of moon, nor variation of stars, that there were no marine monsters, that there was no sea in which they would swim, and that there were no streams, no herds, no beasts, nor birds, nor dragons or serpents. The sages of the Hebrews answered, what was there at that time, since thou nothing he has hitherto mentioned existed? The Evernew tongue answered, every creature was with a marvel, to wit, God without beginning, without end, without sorrow or age, or decay. There was no hour, nor time, nor space, that he existed not. He is not younger or older now than at first. There was nothing that was hard for him to do, but he thought a thought, and to that thought there was no beginning. He thought of somewhat nobler, that his power might be seen, and his dignity indescribable, that was not in any other things, although he himself was it. Suddenly, then, after the thought, he created light. This was the light he created, to wit, the circuit of the celestial vault, with 9 ranks of angels. 70 was their number of tribes, with the 624 sunny plains, with melodies and beautiful colors, such as are upon the 7 shapes of the celestial vault. So in the same day he made the circuit of the shapes, to wit, the matter whereof the world was fashioned. For of the shape of the world God first made the shape of a round circle. And so, the circle of the earth, as it says in Proverbs, that he encompassed the dry land upon the waters of the deep. And remember, we know that the circle was inscribed upon the waters of the deep. All right, so continuing. And then remember that the vaulted dome, he made it into a bowl shape, and it had 7 divisions, and on those 7 divisions, the 7 planets of the universe, as it is cited, the Saturn, the Moon, Venus, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, and the Sun. Those are the luminaries which move in circuit above the face of the earth. All right, continuing. Here's where it gets precise. Verse 18. And then said the sages of the Hebrews, Tell us now diligently what arrangements are in the universe, for we are in ignorance and darkness concerning every one of them. The Evernew tongue answered, Though ye see it not, 'tis in roundness that everything created has been cast according to the shapes of the world. For 'tis in circularity of roundness that the heavens have been made round about, and in circularity the seven seas have been made, and in circularity the earth has been made, and in circularity of roundness the stars traverse the round wheel of the universe. And in roundness of form the souls were seen after issuing from their bodies. And in roundness is seen the circuit of the high celestial vault, and in roundness is seen the orbit of the sun and the moon. Reasonable is all that. For circular without beginning or end is the Lord who hath ever been, who will ever be, and who made all those things. Therefore, the world has been embodied in a round shape. And just like with Isaiah 40, verse 22, where it says that the Most High sits upon the circle of the earth, that it's not talking about the circle of the earth as being a sphere or a ball, but in being a two-dimensional, the compass that is inscribed upon the waters of the deep. So make that very clear, because otherwise you will just draw confusion and actually support the teaching of deception. That you have to consider that the roundness is, the way that the circle, that the stars, they move in a circle above our heads, just as we see in the time-lapse photography. And so it's amazing that this particular text, written so very long ago, has revealed within it the layout and the motions of the luminaries as described by Enoch and others, and talking about how the true dynamics of the cosmology actually work. Okay, I think we're almost to the next break, so I will pick it up on the other side. And when I do so, I'll just read one more time. Hello, Link. Good to see you, sister. I'll read this one passage once more, because it's the summation of how the creation was made in the guise of the Father. Because I didn't read this part, I don't think. Let me see. Well, anyways, it says that basically that it was made in without beginning or end, as is the Lord, who has no end but is infinity, is the infinite loop. All right, we'll be right back for final segment, everyone. All right, welcome back, everybody, for final segment. And I do want to share with all of you that I do believe that it is the final day of the Hebrew year, and that tomorrow some people will see the waxing crescent after sunset, and that will the be the first day of the month of Nisan, and the Rosh Hashanah, the beginning of the new year. And how exciting, And then I know that we've been watching the blooming of all the trees here, and the flowers and the birds regathering and everything, just celebrating in joy, which that also reminds me, at some point, I'm going to do a story and share with you about Solomon and how he was given authority over the animals and also the jinn and the demons. But what is interesting about this story, it's kind of really cool. Solomon was able to understand the language of the animals, and he was able to communicate with them. But what is so very cool about the story that is revealed in this particular text is that Solomon, understanding the language of all of the animals, that all of the different birds and all of the different creatures of the earth, they are singing praises, literally singing praises and bringing forth in exclamation, um, basically reminders to humanity about the majesty of the Most High. I mean, it's really amazing. He goes through a list of all these different songbirds and how, they are singing in different manner about the majesty of the Most High and how humanity should acknowledge and recognize and sing praise and worship and give reverence to him all moments of every day and every second of being. It's it's really remarkable because it shows to you that really the entire creation, other than humanity, that the everything and all of the different natural worlds, as far as the plants, the animals, the stones, everything is in constant prayer and gratitude to God for the abundance and the bounty of and blessing of just existence within it all. And it's beautiful because it shows to Solomon just how all moments of life are like being in church, and that the creatures are ceremoniously worshiping God all moments of being. It's a beautiful thing. It's a humbling thing as well. And it shows us, and it makes us recognize, or at least that we should acknowledge, and like the animal kingdom, that humanity is the one creature that is lost and led astray and so self-centered and ego-minded that we exclude ourselves from participation in what is the grand ritual of every moment that is taking place with the rest of creation. That literally the cacophony of animals and all the creatures and even the celestials, because the stars are also singing praise, the animals, the whales, everything is singing praise to God in every moment without exception, except for humanity. We're the only ones that break ourselves away from participating in that ritual. All right. Tomorrow, Link. Tonight is the lunar conjunctive Sabbath, or at least today. Sabbath is celebrated from dawn to dusk. And so this is the evening of, this is the day and the hour that no man knoweth. It's that moment of limbo where we're at the end of the lunar month and awaiting the sign of the waxing crescent. And that waxing crescent is when the shofars are sounded and the announcement to all of Israel that the new moon being spotted, two witnesses seeing them, they report to the Sanhedrin church, to the Sanhedrin council, and then the shofars were blown all across Israel, and the temple was open, and the people flooded in for what was the new moon celebration. And then they would gather for this new moon convocation and celebrate and give honor to, the beginning of a new moon, a new month, and praise the Most High for the new, what was the new lunar month. And then they understood with the appearance of Rosh Kadesh that every 7 days thereafter, that the quarterly phases of the moon would align with Sabbath. And so in some people will see it tonight after sunset, and others will see it tomorrow night. And so depending on where you are, Rosh Kadesh could be either tonight or tomorrow night. Yes, the Passover will be on the Thursday, April 18th, or Friday, April 19th. Yes, that would be the day that Christ was crucified. All right, let me get back to this text and finish this up. Rereading verse 18th. This is the Evernew tongue, which again, for those who are interested in the text, you can find it printed in full, which I don't know that I've only seen it printed in one other place, and that was in a book of Irish medieval apocrypha. And we have published it in our book of Irish medieval apocrypha as well, but you can find the long version also published in Paradise, Sides of the North, and the Mount of the Congregation, which I was so excited to discover it because it's one of those texts that confirms biblical cosmology, without doubt. All right, continuing. Then said the sages of the Hebrews, tell us now diligently what arrangements are in the universe, for we are in ignorance and darkness concerning every one of them. That's exactly where the world is. The world has no idea as to how the cosmology was made or established. And so this speaks of where the world is caught up in scientism right now in this day and age. The Evernew tongue answered, though ye see it not, 'tis in roundness that everything created has been cast according to the shapes of the world. For 'tis in circularity of roundness that the heavens have been made round about, and in circularity the seven seas have been made, and in circularity the earth has been made, and in circularity of roundness the stars traverse the round wheel of the universe, and in roundness of form the souls are seen after issuing from the bodies. Which that's an interesting statement there, because in all of those ghost shows, they they show the the specks of light, the little round specks of light. And it seems here that this passage is speaking about how the spirit, and in roundness of form, the souls are seen after issuing from the body. So when they leave the body, they are in these round forms, which I thought that was interesting as well. And in roundness is seen the circuit of the high celestial vault. And in roundness is seen the orbit of sun and moon. Reasonable is all that, for circular without beginning or end is the Lord, who hath ever been, who will ever be, and who made all those things. Therefore the world has been embodied in a round shape. And is it not interesting that this particular text also aligns with exactly what we see in time-lapse photography of, um, star trails at night, and also of the way that the midnight sun, the phenomena of the midnight sun, that it spins in circuit around the North Pole. Said the Hebrew populace, a question, what was there in the round multiform circuit which was the material of the universe? The Evernew tongue answered, there was, it said, in the orbital circuit the material of the universe, to wit, cold and heat, light and darkness, heavy and weightless, wet and dry, high and low, bitterness and mildness, strength and feebleness, roaring sea and noise of thunder, odor of flowers, chant of angels, and pillars of fire. All these then were in the round multiform cloud which was made of the material of the universe, and 'tis there that the archangel, oh, no, I'm sorry, I missed a sentence. This is important too. All right, read that again. All these then were in the round multiform cloud which was made of the material of the universe, and 'tis there that the stuff of hell was produced. For hell was not made at once, not until the archangel transgressed God's will, and forsook the law of the king who had created him, together with the innumerable crowd of the angels. Till then, hell was not made, but its material was stored away in the round multiform mass out of which the universe was separated, with all the kindreds which exist therein. And if the angels whose sin had remained in the nature in which they had been created, and in the angelic radiance, the material of hell would have been turned into a beautiful bright kingdom, like unto the kingdom of the holy angels. So we see here that, just as it says in the scriptures, that hell was created for the devil and his angels. And had it not been for their rebellion, hell would have never have been created. But God created hell in order to accommodate the rebellion of Lucifer and the angels, the 1/3 of the angels, his angels, which joined him in insurrection. This then is the work of the first day on which God began the making of the world. Although it hath been written, he that liveth forever created all things at the same time. God also made the firmament between the waters, and divided the waters which were above the firmament from those that were below the firmament. Then on the second day God made the wall of the seven heavens round about with the heavenly waters. For the Lord knew when he created the world that man would transgress the commandment which was declared to him. Therefore, the veil of heaven has been set over against the faces and eyes of men, so that they might not see the blessedness of heaven and the throne of God. Which that's fascinating too, because that's absolutely true. God, the heavenly temple, and paradise are all above the vaulted dome in what Paul mentions as being the third paradise. And so God's kingdom is above our what we can see. We can't peer into unless you receive vision like many of the prophets have. But for the majority of us, looking up, we only see the underside of the vaulted dome of the earth. We can't see through it into what is God's kingdom, even though we do see the waters above it, because it is a clear crystalline structure. But as far as the glory of God, not until the end of days when the firmament rips open and then Christ comes with 10,000s of his saints. The populace of the Hebrews asked, "Point out to us the hidden natures and the mysteries of the seven heavens and the five zones that surround them." The Evernew tongue answered, "The seven heavens in sooth around the world as to which ye ask are, first, the radiant, bright, cloudy heaven which is nearest to you, where outshines the moon and the scattering of stars. Over this two gleaming, flaming heavens, with of angels in them an outbreak of winds. Over these is a cold, icy heaven, bluer than any beautiful color and 7 times colder than snow, out of which shines the sun. Two other gleaming, flaming heavens. On these, where outshine the fiery stars that put fruitfulness into clouds and sea. A high heaven, fiery, splendid, is above these. 'Tis the highest of them all, on which the circuit of the welkin has been set. A sunny and fiery heaven is that wherein there are labor and harmony of melodies and choirs of angels. Now in the zones of the seven heaven are hidden the 12 shaking beasts with the fiery heads above them in their heavenly bodies. They blow 12 winds about the world. In the same zones too sleep the dragons with breaths of fire, dragons tower-headed, with disease on them in their flanks, who bring forth the crash of the thunders and blow lightnings from pupils of their eyes. Thus traverse the zones round the heaven, and the heaven hath seen 7 circuits round about the earth. A frigid, icy zone in the first place, by which seas go down under the convexities of the heavens to the north. Another cold, icy zone which unites the beasts of the sea under seas and under the sides of the earth. To the south is the place where the 9 fiery pillars are put to the south of heaven, supporting it. A splendid zone, the great flame of the world's assembly, which nourishes many fruits of the earth, so that it rises around the world on its breast to the west. 2 beautiful mild zones, which are the arenas of the animals that give cold and heat, and which cast abundance of diseases to the flanks of earth on every side. All right, this is the third day. Oh, of course, we're not going to be able to get through very much more, but I'll just read a couple more passages. I would have liked to have gotten to the luminaries, but we'll see. On the third day, God made lakes and many seas and many kinds of water and many forms of salt seas and the circuit of the earth with its plains and its mountains and its forests and its precious stones and in many kinds of trees. The sages of the Hebrews asked, "Tell us the many kindreds and secrets of the sea." The Evernew tongue replied, "In sooth, there are 3 waters of sea around the world, to wit, first a sea with 7 shapes under the flanks of the earth, against which hell makes a mighty noise, and against which it raises a cry round the valley. An ocean green and luminous round about the earth on every side, which brings forth flood and ebby, which casts up many fruits, and there is the third water, to wit, a flamy sea. Out of the heavens are let 9 winds, which rouse it from its sleep. 470 melodies its waves sing after it has been awakened. It makes a noise like thunder out of its wave voice. And from the beginning of the world it never ceases from flooding. And yet it was never full save on a Sunday. On Sunday it falls asleep. Until the thunders of the wind are awakened by the coming of God from heaven and by the harmony of the angels above it. Besides that, there are many kinds of seas around the flanks of the earth on every side. A red sea is the first place, with many precious stones, with the brightness of blood, with gilded colors between the lands of Egypt and the lands of India. A sea bright sandful with the hue of snow in the north around the islands of Sabarn. So great is the might of its flood that its waves disperse to the lofty course of the clouds. A black waveless sea with the color of a stag beetle, so that no ship that has reached it has escaped from it, save only one boat, by the lightness of its course and the strength of its wind. And battalions of beasts, men, are found there. Then there is a sea that is set in the ocean south of the island of Ebion. On the 1st of May, its flood grows high until in winter it grows to ebb. For half the year it is in flood, for the other half always ebbing. Its reptiles and its monsters wail at the time when it takes to ebbing, and they fall into sadness and sleep. At the flood they awake and rejoice, and the wells and rivers and streams of the world increase. Though glens they go, and after a while they come. Okay, I want to skip down to. We're not going to have the time. I would have liked to have gone into the stars, but we're just not going to have time. And so perhaps, if you're interested, look up. I'm not sure if you'll be able to find it online. It's a difficult book to locate, but you can search the Evernew tongue, and you can get the Genesis account, the narrative of the first creation week, and how it was that the creation was basically established in rotundity, in a circle, and even the heavens were in circularity. The movements of the sun, the stars, everything in circularity. And like God, who in a circle is infinite with no beginning and no end. And so the creation in like manner is created in representation of the Godhead, which having no beginning and no end, they are infinite, preexistent and infinite. All right. God bless all. Good night.